Welcome back to another FPL video and podcast. This will be the transfer tips for Gameweek 15 with another quick turnaround, but all the content for UCL Fantasy and FPL will be covered on this channel. Keep your eyes peeled for the best wildcard and team selection videos alongside the usual streams for both FPL and UCL Fantasy over the next couple of weeks in this hectic Christmas schedule. On the left hand side you can see the points and the rank. Those are from Gameweek 13 and they'll be updated in the team selection and deadline stream, so be sure to check them out as well. And on screen you can see the most transferred in players at this very early stage of the game week. So straight after the deadline stream of Game Week 14, I have made this Transfer Tips podcast just so I can get all the content out for you and put as much emphasis and analysis on each of these videos. Smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. If you enjoy my content, my aim is to get this to 200 likes on YouTube and to keep on pushing towards new goals like 31,000 subscribers. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram and check all the links in the description below for my Patreon and the championships, for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks, and I gifted 10 memberships in the recent deadline stream. Also join the Discord server, FPL League, check out Draft Hound, and also my Spotify. But without further ado, let's jump straight into it. The first of the 11 players I'll cover today is Martin Odegaard, who has been sensational since returning from injury, and he hasn't blanked for Arsenal since that return against Chelsea. He got the assist for Martinelli in that particular game, then also got another assist against Nottingham Forest and scoring from the penalty spot against West Ham. And we've seen that for over a year, where Arsenal do rotate the penalties between Saka and Odegaard. And typically in home matches, Saka will be the designated penalty taker, and away from home, it'll be Odegaard. But if they have two penalties or more in the same game, they will kind of swap to maybe catch the goalkeeper off guard and to make it more difficult for him to save the penalties. Odegaard only costs 8.3 million and his ownership is extremely low at 5.5%, with 1 goal and 2 assists and 16 key passes, which is quite decent considering the limited minutes this season, and 28 FPL points. And Arsenal are top of the fixture difficulty rating until Game Week 19, and they face the likes of Everton, Crystal Palace and Ipswich Town over the next 4. I don't think Fulham away will be particularly easy, and Arsenal lost this game back in December, so it's not going to be an easy match. But I think Odegaard will pull the strings, and he's making Arsenal play to a much higher level than they were when he was absent and really struggling for that creativity. He also brings the best out of Saka, and in my personal opinion, the best Arsenal asset is Saka, so if you have the extra money, definitely go for him. Otherwise, Havertz and Odegaard are decent ways of covering the Arsenal attack, and I would have a slight preference for Martin Odegaard right now, but you also got Bruno Fernandes and other options at this price and below, which I've covered in my recent wildcard and transfer tips podcast. But he is still a great option. Odegaard is arguably one of the best players in world football, especially in his position, and I think he's worth a purchase if you're looking for that differential with a high ceiling. A couple of weeks ago, I discussed selling Trent Alexander-Arnold for a handful of reasons. At that price for a defender, he hasn't really justified it at this moment in time, with only 1 assist and a handful of bonus points. You've also got Virgil van Dijk and Konate, who have been outscoring him at cheaper price points in the best defence in the Premier League, so you could arguably find better value there. But I think things have changed here, and Trent was really impressive against Man City, creating a few chances, getting bonus points on top of that clean sheet. And I think with this fixture run coming up, after the Newcastle away game, which hasn't taken place at the time of this recording, I think Liverpool can still continue this incredible run, and Trent will be really crucial. Now, Arne Slot did say in a recent press conference that Trent won't play the full 90 against Newcastle or Everton, but I still think Trent will start both games and be subbed off around 70 minutes, and we've seen that so many times this season. And they can play Joe Gomez or Quansah as the right back, especially with Conor Bradley out for maybe the next couple of weeks as well, and Konate will miss 5 to 6 weeks, which will result in a lot of Premier League matches missed for Liverpool. But they're still getting the job done. They kept clean sheets against Real Madrid and Man City in the same week. And I still think Trent has a lot to offer in terms of attacking potential, with 6 big chances created and 22 key passes. He's not going to offer much in terms of goals, but he can score the odd free kick here and there, and he takes so many set pieces. So my personal favourite Liverpool defender is Trent Alexander-Arnold. Van Dijk would be a close second, and I think Joe Gomez is certainly worth a punt at 4.8 million. This could be an odd one, but I think if you're looking for a budget midfielder, Amad Diallo could be the very best one to buy, especially with the Arsenal fixture out of the way. There is still Man City away from home in Game Week 16, but with the way City are defending, I think Man United can cause a lot of problems and at least make it a very competitive game in the Manchester derby. And Diallo is really thriving in this wing-back position role, and he's one of the most talented youngsters Man United have, and arguably his trajectory is even higher than a Garnacho, for example, who I did recommend a couple of months ago, and he hasn't really kicked on. His inconsistency has definitely been quite telling, and even though Garnacho's getting minutes and starts, I still think Diallo might be a better punt at a cheaper price point, and we can't even forget the likes of Marcus Rashford, who is in incredible goal-scoring form under the new manager, Ruben Amorim, and Bruno Fernandes is very consistent. Ever since Ten Hag was sacked, he has been getting goals and assists on a regular basis, but I think Diallo might be the best Man United asset in terms of value, although you've got Onana in goal, who's been the best goalkeeper so far this season, and a few decent defender punts, but Diallo at 5 million might be the most exciting of them all, with very low ownership at 5.4%. 1 goal and 5 assists. I think his creativity is really impressive for his age. 19 key passes and 46 FPL points, which is more than Alejandro Garnacho. I think Amad Diallo is worth a punt if you're in the market for a 6 million midfielder or below. This goes without saying, but Ollie Watkins is definitely a hold against Southampton at home, and Aston Villa have great long-term fixtures. The next 4 don't look particularly great with Man City and Newcastle, but Aston Villa can score in those matches, and their issue has mainly been defensively in the Premier League. They are winless in 8 games across all competitions, but we'll see how they get on in Gameweek 14. But Ollie Watkins is certainly worth holding on to, and the only reason I'd look to sell is if he gets injured or suspended. 6 goals and 2 assists is a decent return, but nowhere near to the same levels as we saw last season. 18 big chances, though, is an incredible stat. 64 FPL points. The number of shots in the box is also quite decent at 32. The XG is 6.91, and some of the underlying stats for creativity are also pretty solid, but we always talked about this from last season where Watkins had so many FPL assists, but there was a massive overperformance, and we've seen that reflected in his assist returns this season, which have been nowhere near to the same level or quantity. But I think Watkins is still one of the best forwards in FPL. Erling Haaland is better, but he also costs 6 million more, and I'd rather have an Ollie Watkins than Haaland at this moment in time. Then you could argue Jackson and Isak are even higher in the pecking order than Watkins, especially Nicholas Jackson, but he's walking that suspension tightrope, which I've discussed for several weeks now. Then you've also got the budget forwards like Chris Wood, who's been so solid all season, João Pedro, Welbeck, Cunha, and so many other options. Jamie Vardy scoring against West Ham is definitely another one that might come under consideration, but I'd still rank Watkins in the top 5 very easily, and you just don't sell him when he's about to face Southampton. It's worth emphasising that the vast majority of the stats you're going to see on screen are until Gameweek 13 because most of the Gameweek 14 matches haven't happened yet, but Bruno Fernandes is still worth holding on to. With 2 goals and 6 assists, he has certainly picked it up in the last couple of weeks and he's become a very serious FPL consideration. But if he's your only route to Salah, Palmer and Saka, which for me is the best midfield trio you can go for, then Bruno Fernandes would be a sacrifice to make that happen, and I think that's more than justified. Otherwise, I don't think there are many midfielders I'd make the case of selling Bruno Fernandes to, especially if you kept him against Arsenal away in Gameweek 14. I think he's a captaincy option against Nottingham Forest, and then you look at Bournemouth and Wolves, he's a decent option in those game weeks, and Man City away, I think Fernandes can get a return in the Manchester derby. His ownership is 15.6% and his price has increased so much since I last covered him a couple of weeks ago. I talked about buying him before that Leicester haul, a 17-pointer there, and his XGI has always been incredible. It's just, he was very frustrating at the beginning of the season, just like Garnacho, but it's a different story now, and he's overperforming those stats, and I think he can sustain this for a long period of time. Not the overperformance necessarily, but he can get goals and assists on a regular basis and be a very good FPL asset, and I'd say as your 4th or 5th midfielder, Fernandes would be a very solid option. If you're looking to invest in Man United new, you might want to go for Marcus Rashford or Amad Diallo, but I still think Fernandes can offer a lot in terms of his creativity, the set pieces, and taking penalties, so Bruno Fernandes is worth holding on to. Danny Welbeck has been extremely disappointing in the last 3 game weeks with no returns in that time frame, but I still think Brighton assets are worth holding on to for the next 4 game weeks until the fixtures turn around game week 19. João Pedro might be slightly ahead when you're ranking these forwards, but Welbeck has been so consistent with 6 goals and 2 assists at this very generous price point of 5.9 million, and he's not a differential anymore with 20% ownership, and it is going down ever so slightly, but I don't think it's worth selling him when he's going to face Leicester away, and he's got some promising fixtures afterwards, and Brighton can score multiple goals in some of these matches. His XG is also 5.01, which for me is outstanding for a budget forward, and 68 FPL points can only be bettered by the likes of Chris Wood and Erling Haaland. Nicholas Jackson for me is currently the best forward to buy in FPL, and he's another one who has outscored Danny Welbeck in the forward position this season. But apart from that, there aren't many, if any, and I think Danny Welbeck will still be up there in terms of the highest scoring forwards in FPL for quite a long time. Now, his injury record in the past has been questionable, and in front of goal, he can be inconsistent, but I think his best football in the Premier League has come during his time at Brighton, and he's going to continue to deliver on a consistent basis. Speaking of which, I think Solanke is another consistent option, but he's also much more expensive than Danny Welbeck. And when you look at the upcoming fixtures, Southampton away looks incredible, and you might want to keep Solanke for that particular match. But you've also got Chelsea and Liverpool at home sandwiched in between, and 4 goals and 3 assists is decent, but not good enough in my opinion when you're comparing him to Nicholas Jackson, who's been by far the best mid-price forward in the game this season. You've also got Ollie Watkins if you're not fearful of rotation with Duran, and Erling Haaland, of course, is kind of a different story in itself. He's always going to get the most points or be right up there amongst forwards, but he's not justifying that hefty price tag. And then when you've got the budget forwards I've mentioned before, like Chris Wood, Joao Pedro, and Cunha, it's difficult to find a space for Dominic Solanke, but you may want to keep him until Gameweek 17 at least, and then reassess the situation. His XGI is very healthy, with 6.34 being the figure, and 48 FPL points, which is okay, but I'd still expect a little bit more from Solanke. I've got good memories of owning him. So against Aston Villa this season, he delivered 16 points for me, and I also bought him for the first time ever in FPL in the last campaign, and he scored a hat-trick against Nottingham Forest during his time at Bournemouth, and that's the exact same fixture he has in Gameweek 18. But Solanke could go down in price to 7.5 million tonight, so that's on Tuesday the 3rd of December. Going into the Wednesday, we could see Solanke drop to 7.5 million once again. I don't think he's a must-sell, but there are better forwards at this moment in time. Another player who could go down in price tonight is Alejandro Garnacho, and at one stage this season, he's going to be very appealing, especially if he costs 6.3 million or below, and his ownership is also quite enticing, although he's not the biggest differential you'll ever see. He's got some incredible underlying stats for a budget midfielder, like 9 big chances, but only 3 goals and 1 assist this season. I was expecting more from him, and it's still early days in this new campaign, but I still think he's got another level to reach, and he's very inconsistent for both club and country right now, and this could certainly change with Ruben Amorim, who could get the best out of the Argentine, but I'd rather go for Amad Diallo if you're looking for a budget Man United midfielder, and you've also got Bruno Fernandes for the consistency and bonus points, and Marcus Rashford for that kind of goal-scoring streak that he kind of goes on every 2 or 3 years. So Alejandro Garnacho is a sell. One of the worst fixture swings you're going to see this season is for Everton, who from Gameweek 15 onwards face Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea and Manchester City back-to-back. I don't think Mykolenko is a priority sell for some people because you might have other fires to put out, or you want to chase upside in the midfield and forward line and buy Palmer, Salah, Saka, etc. But if you're in a strong position, or maybe your defensive line is really weak like my own, you might want to sell Mykolenko because I don't see him offering any returns in this time frame. And even beyond this fixture, Everton have some poor games on paper where I don't see many clean sheets for the Toffees, and that's really where the bulk of the points for Mykolenko are going to come from, because in terms of assists or bonus points, you're not going to get very much, and the only bonus points you'll get is when Everton keep a clean sheet in a marginal win, and we saw that once this season against Ipswich Town back in Gameweek 8. So after this 4-gameweek period of hell, as I like to call it, you've got Nottingham Forest at home, Bournemouth away, Aston Villa at home, Tottenham at home, Brighton away. These are not easy games, and Everton can step up against the biggest teams with a solid defensive structure. They beat Liverpool 2-0 back in April and started to kind of put that downfall in Liverpool's title hopes, but I just don't see that happening in Gameweek 15 this season, and Mykolenko is going to be limited to 1 or 2 pointers, and at times, don't be surprised to see him get 0 points or even minus points in certain games. So I think Mykolenko, Calvert-Lewin, McNeil, arguably even Jordan Pickford are all sells. Kluivert scored a hat-trick of penalties against Wolves and set a Premier League record in the process, but I still think the likes of Evanilson and Semenyo are better Bournemouth assets, not to mention Milos Kerkez. That would be my ideal Bournemouth triple-up, but I certainly wouldn't recommend that sort of thing. I think 1 or 2 Bournemouth assets is the sweet spot, and I don't think Kluivert really makes part of that complexion. Now, he is the high-scoring budget midfielder with the exception of Alex Iwobi, the only player who can outscore him at a similar price. So he has had a great start to this season with some big returns against the likes of Arsenal coming off the bench. So I don't think Kluivert is a terrible pick, but I think a lot of people are looking to invest now because of a hat-trick of penalties, which we might not see for a very long time, not just for Bournemouth, but across all Premier League clubs. I think Kluivert is a decent option at 5.4 million and such low ownership. 5 goals and 2 assists this season, 24 shots and 57 FPL points, and Bournemouth have great fixtures in the long term. But you look at the underlying stats, the XG is 4.34. That's really impressive for a budget midfielder, but the bulk of that came from the 3 penalties against Wolves, and I just think you've got so many other budget midfielders like Amad Diallo, Buonanotte, Rodgers, Smith Rowe, perhaps even Alex Iwobi, who has been very impressive so far this season, not to mention Semenyo, who I think will get more attacking returns over the next couple of weeks. You could chase the form of Justin Kluivert, and I think you could do much worse than the Dutchman, but I think it's very knee-jerky, and there are better options in the midfield. The 11th and final player covered today will be Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who has been in brilliant goal-scoring form recently, scoring against Newcastle and Arsenal, and he also kept a clean sheet against Everton, but West Ham are shocking defensively. Despite the 2 clean sheets in the last 4 game weeks, they shipped 5 to Arsenal and conceded 3 in that heavy loss against Leicester City. They created some big chances and arguably the scoreline didn't reflect the nature of the game, but West Ham have that vulnerability from a defensive perspective, and Wan-Bissaka isn't going to score that many goals throughout the entire season. He has never been renowned for that. He is a very good slide tackler and very good in 1v1 duels. I just don't think it's worth investing in West Ham defensively. Fabianski as your backup goalkeeper is as far as I'd go, and I don't think Wan-Bissaka is worth it over the likes of Lewis Hall, Colwill, Van Heck, and all the options I've discussed at this price point and below, not to mention Milos Kerkez, who is definitely emerging as a very enticing option in a better team right now in Bournemouth, who can also compete against the best teams in the country. Now, West Ham have good fixtures over the next 4 game weeks, but afterwards it does get tough for the Hammers, and the manager Julian Lopetegui is under serious pressure. If he is sacked and we see a manager bounce, then maybe Wan-Bissaka could become an enticing option. I do like Kudus and Bowen as punts going forwards, but because West Ham are so inconsistent, you might argue it's worth avoiding all of their assets altogether. That wraps up another Transfers podcast for FPL, this time out of Gameweek 15. With the deadlines coming thick and fast, it's very important to stay on top of these deadlines and have all the update information. So if you stay tuned to this channel and hit the notification bell, you will never miss a single upload or live stream. So the best wildcard and team selection videos and also the deadline stream will keep you well informed for Gameweek 15 and beyond. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Our aim is to get this to the 200 likes and to keep on pushing towards 31,000 subscribers and beyond. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the links in the description below for my Patreon and the championships for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks, the Discord server, FPL League Draft Hound, as well as Spotify. Leave a 5-star review on my podcast. It goes a long way to supporting my channel. I wish you all the best of luck for Gameweek 15 and the rest of the season, and I'll see you next time.